Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'd like to say thank you to Oktopost for inviting me to talk about this topic. It's one that I love to talk about, and we love to talk about here at Kapost, so it's a pleasure to be sharing some thoughts with you here today. We covered a lot of housekeeping there, but I'm going to go over a few things. My Twitter handle is Andrew J. Coate, in case you want to ask some questions during the webinar or yell at me or anything else that you feel is fun. And in spirit of this webinar, this picture is repurposed from my wedding picture, so there you go. These are the main topics that we just went over that I hope to cover in depth here in my time with you. One thing to note, there's a lot that goes into repurposing content on a structural level, an organizational structural level. It looks like our group that's listening in here is kind of spread across various types of organizations, so I'm not going to get too much into ideal structure or how to set up your organization, but I'm going to talk more tactically on actual repurposing of content. What are some things that you can do as soon as you leave this webinar to maximize your efforts here. So a few other things, as they mentioned, we will be recording this webinar, and I am going to reference a lot of resources for further reading because this is a very big topic, and in the follow-up email I've given Oktopost some links that they can share with the group of you, and so all my works cited and all that fun stuff will be coming to you. In addition, give a little shout out to a brand new community that we have started here at Kapost. It's found at community.kapost.com, and it's open to all marketers. It's free, and I will be starting a discussion that you see there. How do you repurpose content? And I encourage you all after this webinar to join at any moment and see how other marketers are doing this and share your own thoughts. So first, I want to start here with a major problem, and this is B2B focused here. There's a lot of research that's come out recently, and I think this number has changed slightly, but not very much. Serious Decisions has pointed out that 70 to 80% of B2B content goes unused. So now, why is that? Well, other research has shown here that there's a lot of reasons. These are all the different tactics, the different purposes for content, the reasons that organizations are creating content. As you can see, they're very scattered and they're very diverse. And so there's a lot of goals for content, and what happens is if you have this many goals, you're not really having any goals. It's hard to stay organized and it's hard to stay focused when you're kind of scattered, and in larger organizations, maybe these represent different divisions that are supposed to be working together, but they all have their own goals in mind. And so too many goals lead to one-off scattered contents. At Kapost, we call that random acts of content. So that's a term to basically say you're creating content not necessarily cohesively, not in an organized fashion. It's just all over the place saying, hey, we need to get a piece of content out. We need to get an ebook out or a white paper to address this topic. Okay, go. And so we're finding that that is a major organizational challenge regardless of the size. You might be a one-person shop, and if you're not exactly sure why you're creating content and what you're trying to achieve from it, you still end up in this place. And so this is your company, and it may not be, but if this is your company, this should be the solution. Taking a look at across departments and gathering minds together and saying, okay, well, what do we need to do to work together on this? What are the common themes? Where is overlap? Where can we cohesively execute on this campaign? So I'll give you an example here. Five9, they're, as you can read on the screen here, a contact center software solution, and they were in this particular situation. So they had all sorts of diverse efforts. There were a lot of goals. There were a lot of people trying to go in different directions within the organization, but they all had a common goal in mind. They just weren't getting there in the same way. And so what happened with Five9 is Pat Oldenburg here, who came in, and he really focused everybody. He brought everybody together, and he said, hey, this is how we're going to go. We're going to go in this direction, and these efforts that were over here, they coincide with these efforts that were over there. And so now we're going to bring that and put that into one cohesive campaign. And so when they did that, and they launched their first ever integrated campaign where all of these scattered resources and different people in different departments were put together and working toward one thing, they saw 4 times as many leads as the prior campaign and 3 times as many closed deals as the prior campaign. Those are pretty huge results. And that sounds great. And it sounds like, okay, well, all I need to do is get everybody aligned and great, Coate. So that's going to be what I do, and we'll be great and we'll have lots of business, right? But as the slide shows, a lot of times theory doesn't exactly work the way we think it should. So I recommend it looks like this instead. This is called the content pillar approach. It's something that we talk about a lot at Kapost. And it may be familiar to some of you, it may not be, so I'm going to go over this very briefly here. So what a content pillar is, it's the idea that you have in this chart here, it looks like a particular asset, but it really is a central theme, a central idea, a large initiative, whatever the word is in your company or your organization. But you start with something big, and very easily it breaks down into all of these smaller interrelated pieces. And so the goal is to create high-quality, buyer-centric content. And just by creating that one big piece, you've already created a lot of smaller pieces, and you might not be aware of that. And that's what we're going to talk about for a bit here. This busy slide is a more practical look at that pretty fancy chart in the last one. So this is an actual content campaign that we at the Kapost team launched last year. It was called the Content Marketing Hiring Handbook, and it was the result of a lot of research we did that said, you know, content marketing is this huge topic now. A lot of organizations are trying to hire for these positions, but they don't know where to start. They don't know, do I need a writer? Do I need a journalist? Do I need a designer? Well, what do I need? And so we looked at a lot of those questions, and we gathered a lot of those questions, and we attempted to answer via interviews with experts and our own research, all of these kind of things. And so the basis of this campaign was this one major asset. It was an ebook, and that's what you see in the lower left there. From that, we were able to create all of these derivative assets. And this is just a sample. This is a graph we put together. It's probably a few months old now, and so there's actually been more. These lines that go in every single direction, they keep going. And so this is just an overview of how we started with one big idea and turned it into many smaller ideas. And so as it says in the corner, this approach provides marketers with relevant material to support the ongoing promotion and distribution of the main piece without having to create dozens of unique ideas. What that really means in practice is that you can continue to create these smaller pieces, a slide share, blog post, a variety of social posts, and you're never at a loss for things to say about the original asset. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel each time. You've already got something that you know, this is what we want to drive back to, and this is what we want to talk more about. You're just finding different directions to it. So going deeper into this campaign, I'm going to show you how it starts to break out and what all of the different kinds of content looked like for us. So as you can see in the bottom left there, that's the original. It's the Content Marketing Hiring Handbook, and it involved a lot of research. And so you can see there's a lot of charts, a lot of pretty things. We took a lot of those charts, turned that into a giant infographic, wrote a blog post about it. Jean Spencer, as you can see in the upper corner, she was the lead of this project and did a ton of research and came with some great results here. What she decided to do is to create even more content out of the research that she had pulled together. So you see the Kapost Content Hiring Survey. That was just all of it's the results of the survey that sparked all of this. We asked a lot of marketers across different organizational sizes, what are you struggling with, and what are you looking to hire for, and what skills are you looking for, and all of these questions. And so Jean compiled that and made that public. She also came up with job description templates in case hiring was your main goal. This was a separate asset outside of the ebook. And so all of these are interrelated. they all go together, but they're all from that one original idea, which is let's teach people how to hire for content marketing. And so from that real basic idea, let's teach people how to hire from content marketing, a few of these things spring up very easily. And as you can see, they all look alike. So as far as creating these different assets, there's not a lot of reinventing the wheel that's happening. We're reusing charts and just putting them in a different place. We're using color schemes and make it look a little bit different. And so it all blends together, but each of these has a distinct purpose that's different than the other, yet it all relates back to that original idea. Furthermore, breaking off of the pretty branded, making everything look exactly the same, there are all sorts of other ideas that we were able to come up with about this exact topic. So you see there's another infographic here. That's Jesse Noyes up there in the corner, Senior Director of Content Marketing here at Kapost. And then we saw a few different ways to phrase this question. So we saw that there's talking about the topic, which is hiring, and then there's talking about actually getting hired. And so using the same research and flipping it and looking in a different direction and taking our same thoughts and just positioning them a little bit differently, we were able to create a slide share called How to Get a Job in Content Marketing. And then we did an interview and a webinar with Jason Miller over at LinkedIn, and his focuses were, or he focused on how to actually hire a content marketer very specifically. So we took this giant topic of a content marketing team and this whole building out your division, and we narrowed it down and focused on one position, and we found an expert who really knew how to hire for that position, and a lot of content came out of that as well. And these other two that you see on the screen right there, those are blog posts that were written by other people, not by us, but they're different ways and different takes just from the headlines that were taken away from this original topic. So again, all of this goes back to the Content Marketing Hiring Handbook. It's all back to this one idea, and because of the depth and the, I guess, the need for that topic, there's all these different pieces that come away from it. So right now, I'm on this webinar with Oktopost, which is a social tool that I use, and so I feel like I should also talk about the social piece here. So this is just a brief look. Now, we did more promotions than this, but this is a brief look at what social looked like in support of this campaign. As you can see, there's a lot of different tweets, a few different LinkedIn posts, and all of them have a different format. They all kind of feel a little bit different. They all highlight different points. So some of it is talking about hiring in general. Some of them have stats. Some of them are focusing on the actual people. For example, the tweet in the corner. It gave us a chance to have a little bit of a character, to be a little bit fun, and I'm reusing a graphic there, my evil face, from the actual hiring handbook. And so it's another way to draw people in and to talk about the same topic without sounding repetitive. And so this is a tactic I recommend, and it goes directly to the idea that you're able to come up with a lot of different things to say and a lot of different ways to frame the conversation, still leading back to the same thing. So as you can see, some of those links go to blog posts, some of those links go directly to the hiring guide. All of that relates back to this original topic, but it's very different. Each thing is kind of approaching it from a different direction, and we're going to talk about why that's important in a little bit here. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I work on a team. I've got a content team that is able to produce a lot of content. I'm in awe of them all the time at how great they are at producing this content so quickly. Well, what if you're a smaller team? This still works. So this is Barry Feldman, and I would say that Barry Feldman is one of the masters in the marketing world of repurposing content. The man starts with one idea, and he's able to find multiple ways to reuse that idea just by tweaking either headlines or just by tweaking a small piece of what he's saying. So right here, Barry, in the upper left, Barry had done an interview with me about a LinkedIn group that I run, and so he turned that into this post for Kissmetrics called How to Rule LinkedIn Groups, and it's more like a transcript of an interview, really. From that, he took that same topic and he wrote a post on LinkedIn, and he took that same topic again and he wrote a post, as you see in the bottom left. And I was able to find quite a few other examples of him taking this topic and bringing it into a few different formats. Now, it wasn't just copying and pasting the interview over and over in all these different spots. He was able to pull out some key points, some things that I had said during the interview, or things that he had surmised. He's a member of the group, so he was able to bring in his own perspective. All of those kind of different takes had to do with the original topic of, there's a great LinkedIn group, it's good for marketers, and here's what we have to say about it. And so he was able to continue to create content, continue to guest post and work this topic around without sounding repetitive, but still leading back to an original idea. More importantly, or I guess in a larger focus, let's take a look at the content that he actually creates that's his own. So Barry is well known as an influencer marketing expert, and a lot of that comes from the amount that he talks with influencers in the marketing space. And so Barry has done a giant interview with a lot of these faces that you see here, and so he has essentially a database, if you will, of great ideas and great topics and great thoughts and great quotes from these marketers. Well, he's working from that. He's turned it into quite a bit of content. So the Google search results you see, those are just 4 of the many articles that Barry has written in different places that focus on this idea of how to be better at influencer marketing. And so, as you can see from just the different titles, it's just phrasing it in different ways, and it's reusing it in different ways. And so there's an infographic here. In the bottom left, you see how he was able to break down the infographic into smaller pieces and post those in a blog post with more information about it. And so really what Barry's doing is starting with this, exactly the content pillar approach that I talked about a few slides ago. He's taken this one big idea, which is, let's talk to influencer marketing or influencers in marketing, and let's figure out how that should work, how other companies should connect with them. And he's written quite a bit of content about that. So here's the real question. Won't my audience get tired of this, right? Sad puppy. This is a common worry, that by doing something like this and by repeating it, like, aren't people going to get tired of it? Okay, we get it. You know how to hire for content marketers, Kapost. You can shut up about it right now. Here's the answer. People aren't glued to their feeds at all times. Let's think about this for a minute. Most of the promotion that we end up doing happens on very busy channels, on social media, so on Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, all of these different places, and via email. And I don't know if your inbox looks anything like mine, but I bet it does, and it's overflowing. And there's so many different communications. We get texts, we get tweets, we get all of these different things coming at us at all times. There's no way that we're plugged into all of the things that are being said at all times. And furthermore, here's some research on reach in social media. So less than 2% of people who are following you are actually able to see in their timeline, or actually, I guess, reached, to use that word, in your timeline when you're tweeting. So for us at Kapost, we've got about 5,400 followers. That's like something like 108 or something like that are actually seeing a particular tweet at a given time. And that's assuming that they're actually reading it and they're actually engaged with it, because as we know how Twitter works, there's a bunch of other things on the screen at the same time that they could choose to read instead. And then, I'm not even going to talk too much about Facebook, but this is some Ogilvy research from last year that's just showing the continual decline of organic reach in Facebook. You can extrapolate this across whatever social site you want, and you can also take the idea that, well, in email, we're all getting all sorts of different emails all the time. So even though email marketing is a great channel, there's a lot of messaging that's happening to people at the same time. So I bring this up to say that no, you shouldn't worry too much unless you're just tweeting every 3 seconds about the same exact topic over and over and over and over again. You shouldn't worry about burnout, especially if you go back to the tweets that I showed you for the Content Marketing Hiring Handbook. They're a variety. They're different messages, and they're talking about different things. And so there's different reasons that somebody might read or click on that, and it's the same thing. We're not just posting a headline over and over and over again. We're diverse in what we're actually creating. So if I'm not saying it correctly or clearly enough, here's some smarter people than I that have some things to say about that. Essentially, the idea here is that when you're repurposing content, when you're taking a piece and breaking it up into all these different pieces, you're actually changing it a little bit and you're reformatting it to fit. It's different each time. And so while the topic and while that central idea might be the same, the content isn't just the same thing over and over. You're actually creating unique content with its own viable purpose and its own unique properties. So the takeaway here, everybody has a different way that they prefer to be communicated to and different things that grab their attention. And so when I schedule social and when I write different types of blog posts and different things like that, I try and keep that in mind that while there might be some research that said, yeah, these kind of tweets get us the best clicks, when I look at my social data, there might be other ways to branch outside of that and different ways to phrase things and different ideas that we can come up with for content, because that might resonate with a different audience. Somebody might be more willing to engage with your content if it's a pretty infographic. Other people want to read a blog post that's got some great quotes and deep, detailed thought leadership. So it depends, and I think if we're creating toward that idea, you're fine. And so the other thing that we have to remember is that in marketing, there's different stages. There's different buyer stages, different personas within those different buyer stages. And in fact, even the same persona, as they progress during different stages, it can be served different types of content or different ways and different messages that relate to a central theme or central idea, right? So this is something we do, going back to that hiring guide. There's a different type of person and at a different stage that's going to be interested in the deep details, the actual white paper that talks about the research, and there's another different person that was interested in the job templates, and then there are the people who are going to read just the ebook and stay there. And so we're keeping that in mind as we create content, and I'm not a big fan of those. You can find them on Google, the different charts that show different stages of the funnel and different content that goes. I don't like to say that this type of content works best at this funnel or this stage of the funnel. It's generic, and there may be some research that says, okay, videos work better at this stage, but I don't like to limit myself or to limit. I don't want to limit you guys on in saying this is the type of content you should create. I think it should be more open and more creative, and saying how can we deliver this message best at this particular stage? How can we continue to provide value? And here's the other thing. So this is a slide for those of you who aren't familiar with either South Park or the Simpsons reference that this is making. There's an episode of South Park where the character with the tinfoil hat is trying to come up with different evil plans to take over the world, and each of his plots sounds like something that happened in a Simpsons episode. And the little red-haired kid there keeps saying, "Simpsons did it," as in, hey, it's been done before, so you shouldn't do that. It's actually a pretty good parody there, because the joke is really, okay, well, we can't do anything new because the Simpsons did everything, but the Simpsons in fact are referencing other pop culture and Greek literature and all these other different stories and things like that. So just because it's been done before doesn't mean that we should be afraid to bring our take on that topic as well. I'll give you an example here. You're all sitting here listening to me yap about repurposing content. Well, I Googled that term the other day, and there's over 25,000 results of just blog posts written in the last couple of years with this topic. And yet you're still here listening to me for some reason. So what that says to me is that this is an engaging enough and an interesting enough topic. And maybe I'm new to you. Maybe Oktopost is new to you. Maybe there's some different reason that we're reaching you today and able to talk about this content. And I know that I have a little bit of a different perspective on this than even other people in my company, and so it was relevant to talk about. And so I think a lot of organizations that maybe approach this and say, no, we can't do that because it's been done before, or oh, our competitor did that, or we have to be the thought leader. We have to say something new that nobody's ever said. I think it's a bit short-sighted. I think it should be about finding a way to not necessarily just join a conversation, but just say, this is a need. We have an answer for it, so let's give our answer. And hopefully your answer is a bit different than competitors or a bit unique or whatever, but it shouldn't be about finding the newest and the grandest and the biggest idea, because odds are you're going to be discouraged when you start digging a little deeper and finding that somebody thought about it before or at the same time or shortly thereafter. Oh, by the way, I want to call out that I just had 3 Simpsons references in a row right there, so you guys can thank me later for that. You're welcome. So here's some ideas to take away. These are kind of just a brief overview. I plan to write a blog post about this topic. Shall we say repurposing my slides into a blog post? That's right. Right after this, I'll be going and doing that and posting it tomorrow morning. Oktopost has promised to share that link with you, and so in that blog post I'll probably be a little bit more detailed about these kind of things and link to some further sources on how to actually go about repurposing content, because there's a lot of people who have written some great things about it, and there's also a lot of tools that help with this. Given our time, I really didn't want to go too deep into the technology part, but that's not hard to find either, and I'll provide those resources. So here are just a few ideas, and a lot of them, I think, just it's taking your content and looking at it a different way each time, or taking an idea and looking at it a different way each time. It's setting out from the very beginning and saying, all right, I am going to create a lot out of this one idea. I think many of the challenges with repurposing content come when you're doing it after the fact, and you're going back and saying, this is so much work because I already did all that work, and now I have to do more work to make 5 blog posts, and well, I think of it more in the terms of, all right, so for your next campaign, sit down and say, what's my idea? And then going back to that content pillar approach, you map out all of the various pieces that this idea could eventually become. And what you'll start to see is some different trends and some different ideas develop there if you're creative enough for it. So a giant blog post that you were planning to write, that could actually be 3 small ones, and they could each have a little bit of a different take on the original topic. As you write that big piece, just copy and paste your thoughts into a Word document or into your blog post drafts or different things like that, so that you have pieces to work off of. And when you sit down to write that next blog post, you've already kind of started to think about it. You already have some things to say about it, and so you're just enhancing on those. We like to experiment with calls to action here at Kapost. Part of that was the social you saw. There's different ways to get people to click on that link, but we also do this on our blog. And so it's not just as much as like changing download now to get it, get the ebook or click here or any of those different kind of things. It's not just about words. It's just about finding a different way to draw people to that click to download kind of thing. And so there are ways to A/B test your call to actions or tools that help you do that, but I think it's unique. It's a unique opportunity to. We all hear download now all the time, I think is my point. And so if you can find a different way to get people to do that action, but not have to necessarily say, hey, download this ebook, you're probably in a pretty good place. Experiment on social right there at the top. There are all sorts of ways to do this, and that could be a webinar in itself, talking about ways to just repurpose one idea into various social posts, but I think these kind of cover it. Sometimes you can use a quote, sometimes you can use stats, write a title, rewrite your title headline for social, try something different, try to say something different, and so on and so forth. Really, at the very bottom there, it's kind of the workflow that I think this kind of approach needs. You start with a big theme, you break it down to what are the key points, and how do I describe those key points to our different buyer personas at different stages of the funnel. And so if you're asking yourself those questions, you're probably in a pretty good place, and mapping all that content out and following that content pillar approach probably does you pretty well. So that'll do it for me. I want to give some time to ask some questions here. Sit back over to the fine folks at Oktopost, and hopefully this was helpful. But I'm looking forward to answering some questions here.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Andrew. During your presentation, we've been receiving questions throughout the presentation, so I will start taking our questions now. However, you're invited to continue posting your questions throughout this session by clicking the questions panel on the right of your screen. So our first question comes from Allison Kandari. When repurposing content, how do you make sure you don't run into SEO penalties or related problems? Doesn't Google's Panda update punish you when you use the same content multiple times?
That's a great question, and that is a very, I could go deep into technical stuff, but I'm not actually the right person to do that. The answer that I would say is that it's not so much, I don't want to make it seem like repurposing content is just copying and pasting and using the same words over and over again. I think I'm talking about the actual idea. And so we are rewriting and rephrasing content. And so while we're talking about the same topic over and over again, we're not using the same words and we're not using the same descriptions over and over again. So you might read 10 blog posts about that hiring guide. Each one is unique in what it says, and if there's anything that it repeats, it might be a stat or it might be different things like that. So I think that's probably the best answer there, that it's not about copying and pasting and just reusing the exact same words over and over again.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Next one comes from Dennis Kibriev. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Dennis. And this is more of a statement than a question. Love the Simpsons references. Definitely a new take on content repurposing.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad somebody out there got it because I was really afraid that no one would.
All right. Next one comes from Nathan Tufano. Please tell me that you will provide me with this presentation after the webinar. Absolutely.
We will provide you with this presentation after the webinar.
And last but not least, there's one from Lisa Shaw. You've done a great job explaining the content pillar, how to repurpose from a single content piece, and what about working from the other direction, aggregating owned content onto new forums, such as blog posts, articles, infographics, ebooks.
Excellent idea. I need to give a shout out to a friend of mine named Eric Eyl. It's E-R-Y-C-E-Y-L. He is a person that if you Google him on the internet does a great job of this. And so what he does is he might start with he writes a lot about work-life balance. And so he'll start with a blog post, and what he'll realize as he starts to write that maybe this idea can bubble up into something bigger. And so it becomes a series, and then maybe it becomes an ebook, and then maybe it becomes a podcast. Person, webinar, whatever. And so I think it can work in the other direction. It's a little bit harder that way, at least in my take on it, but it absolutely works. And I think you mentioned guest posts. That's another fantastic way to find content being repurposed. So we have a PR person that works for us here, and he's quite often pitching the original idea of our piece, and we'll find somebody, a marketing profs or content marketing institute or these other people who are leaders in our space, essentially writing about our topic and linking to our asset, but giving their own take on the topic. And so there are other ways to, I guess, go bigger from a smaller piece as well.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Next question comes from Don Tai. We are a regional field marketing team, and our content usually is produced by Marcom to use. The content is mostly product focused and doesn't have a clear buyer persona. Any suggestions on what they can do?
Well, you might not like this answer, but the first thing would be to figure out that buyer persona and figure out the structure. In all of the information that I'm going to send along after this presentation, there's a great deck called The Rise of Content Marketing Operations, and that talks a lot about the challenge that you're facing right now in the organization. However, I will say that if you're really understanding what needs your product meets and breaking down those each individual features of the product, there are ways to start conversations that don't seem so product centric, right? So you're able to talk about those needs and kind of it sounds weird to say cleverly disguised, but if you're writing a blog post about, say, a challenge in general that your product overcomes, the call to action at the end can be very easily, hey, and by the way, if you're in need of a solution to this problem that we've talked about from a thought leadership perspective, why don't you try a demo? Why don't you take a look at our product or something like that? And that can happen even maybe a few pieces of content in when you're talking about your product. But I think that there are ways to say, our product solves X problem. Let's talk about X problem for a while. Let's dissect it. Let's give our take on what the actual challenges are and how we think that they can be fixed. And eventually, sure, the answer comes back to your product, but it doesn't have to be so, hey, you're having this problem, so buy us. There's ways to kind of fill that gap in between with education of these potential buyers. But if you don't know who those personas are, I would say figure that out first.
Thank you, Andrew. Next one comes from Napala Pratini. To what extent do you use LinkedIn for repurposed content? What are the best strategies? LinkedIn has Pulse, advertisements, sponsored posts, groups, etc. How do you choose which to use?
That's a great question, and we use all of them at Kapost, and we also have a group called the Content Marketing Academy, which is a very large group of fellow marketers that we use as well. Not necessarily to promote our content, but to, I guess, spawn it. We ask a lot of questions to them, and they help direct us in help point us in the direction that we need to go with our content. It's difficult for me to say exactly what our ratio of when we choose to support things or not. A lot of times it's just a little bit of research. Say we have a financial services ebook or something like that, and there's a way to promote that using some paid. That might be something that we think is better supported with paid because there's a strong amount of data that we can use via LinkedIn's advertising platform to target correctly. Pulse is an interesting thing. I've been kind of experimenting with that myself, rewriting as one of the things I showed you with Barry Feldman. He reads that topic and posts on LinkedIn. The aforementioned Eric Isle, I gave a shout out, finds great success with this strategy. He basically rewrites blog posts or rewrites ideas on LinkedIn. So I know I'm kind of dancing around the question, but I think it just depends on what the actual purpose is. I don't think that there's every time use all kind of thing. I think is the purpose here to generate leads, or is it traffic, or is it all the different initiatives you have? And I think each of those different tools on LinkedIn and different places you can post your content on LinkedIn help each of those goals in a different way and maybe in a better way than one another. And my email is on the screen there. So if you're interested in more, we can talk after the webinar about it. I'd love to kind of work with that.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Next one comes from Alexandra Rice. What are some resources we can look to stay up on the latest content marketing?
Oh, that's fantastic. Please, everybody, subscribe to a blog called The Content Marketer. I'm laughing here because that's our blog, but there's actually, here's what I would recommend. So this is going to sound self-serving again, but there is this group called the Content Marketing Academy on LinkedIn. It's free. It's open to join. It's a group that we've moderated very closely so that it's not spammy like other LinkedIn groups that you may hear out there. So we average about 15 comments per post, and so that topic has come up a lot, and so I would say maybe head over to the Content Marketing Academy and say, hey, what are some great reading, and then we'll have that conversation there.
All right, thank you, Andrew. And next one is from Dennis Kilbrave again. How important do you see a good copywriter playing in the process? So many content marketers seem to believe that strategy trumps the actual execution.
That's that's a great point, and I think that writing is essential, and having a good copywriter is essential. We have a trio of content marketing managers. One of them is our senior managing editor, and they're very strong writers and make my writing a lot better too. It's great having a great editor. The key to that is um, having somebody who can really speak educatedly or write educatedly about a topic. I mean, sure, that can be learned, but you know, sometimes it matters more that I guess the communication is there, that the message is portrayed correctly. As you can tell, I'm having trouble speaking myself, but you know, so I think sometimes an approach of a very straightforward, this is how things are, and this is what we have to say about it, can work. And so, even that said, I think you really need to have somebody who can portray that well. And so, copywriting is essential. I think if there's not clear, if people aren't really able to understand what you're trying to communicate, it's usually a sign of an adjustment in copy, changing the call to actions, changing your purpose. And so, I guess to answer your question in a long-winded way, copywriters are great to have.
Thank you, Andrew. And finally, Lucille Turpin has a question. My company does not have a presence in social media yet. What basic content avenues do you recommend that they focus on?
Say that again. Content avenues, was that the question?
That is correct. Basic content avenues that you would recommend that they focus on.
So this is a legitimate time to say it depends. That usually is a cop-out answer, but it's absolutely not, and I'll tell you why. For us, at Kapost, we're a B2B company. We focus a lot on we market to marketers, and so we do really well on Twitter, and then LinkedIn second. In companies that I've worked at the past, it's been Facebook that's been dominant for us. Even after Facebook started limiting reach, Facebook did great. Other companies I've worked at, LinkedIn was the killer. And so it really does depend on where your audience actually is. I think at the start, you have to focus on the big four, if you will. You know, Google Plus is still relevant for marketers in a lot of ways. That's a topic that is for another day, but you have LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter as well. And so I think you kind of you start with a strategy that connects to all of them and uses your messaging differently for each site. Obviously, don't just repost the same stuff over and over on different sites. And then I think what happens when you take a look is what resonates the most. Are people clicking more on LinkedIn? Are people clicking more on Twitter? Are people actually engaging with us on Facebook? Social Media Examiner is a great site to get you started. There's a lot of writing about getting going and finding your niche and everything like that. But I think you have to be open to realize that one site might not be as strong as other ones, and that there's no reason to scatter efforts in places that aren't producing. For example, I don't really care about Facebook for us right now. It does not have any relevance for us. We've talked many times about even page down because we're putting effort into making these creative posts there, and nobody's clicking on them, nobody's seeing them. It's just not providing a business value. So we may decide to put our efforts elsewhere. That may change, you know, 2 years from now or whatever. It might change, and so I think you have to be able to adjust and focus in on what's producing for you, and you know what tactics can work. So big question, but hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Andrew. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. However, if you have any further questions that we weren't able to cover in today's session, you are very welcome to either send them to myself or Andrew and to the emails that you see here on the screen. We'll leave this slide up for a few minutes so you can copy our contact details. Once again, thank you everyone very much for attending this webinar. And Andrew and I, on behalf of everyone here, we hope that you found it valuable and that you have a great day. Thank you.